Hey all, welcome back to Room 66, where every week we will be diving deep into the paranormal planes and exploring what truly goes on with the unexplainable. But before we get started, we would like everyone to know that we started a Patreon for everyone who wishes to support us. So check out the perks in the link down below. Today's episode is a story submitted by a Reddit user who wishes to remain anonymous. A high-ranking government official who boarded a classified government vessel, and the things he's seen out in the deepest parts of the ocean. So sit back, relax, and enjoy your stay in Room 66. I work on a ship, or rather a big research platform, out in the South Pacific Ocean, and we're trapped in a storm. I'm definitely breaching my NDAs by writing this, but to hell with that. I'm pretty sure something insane is going on here. Currently, we're trapped in a typhoon that has been going on for a couple of days now, and I need some opinions from someone familiar with this kind of shit. My name is Jack Chang. I'm a recent PhD grad, and this ship is called the Ad Novum Crass, but we just generally call it Crass. See, things were amazing when I first got here. I bet you can imagine how exciting this was for me. I've spent the past 4 years working my ass off in my PhD, and now I get to be a part of something grand, something absolutely amazing. Sure, it's all classified and stuff, but doesn't that make it more exciting? I get to stay and work on this amazing vessel with an artificial beach and all modern amenities you need. Not to mention, all the core staff, myself included, get 50% discounts on all expenditures on board, whether it be shopping or restaurants, and I don't even pay rent. All of a sudden, the bland salary didn't seem so bad anymore. Plus, the first time I saw my studio apartment, damn, it's honestly better than anything I've had before. I have a panoramic view of the ocean, and my fridge has a display and can talk. I can email my family and friends freely, just no details about work or the ship. I'm pretty sure our communications are monitored anyway. We even had to give up our personal phones for approved phones, which were actually an upgrade for me. The first week was mostly one big orientation course. I met my immediate superior, Dr. Francesca Blanco, the second science officer. She, this level-headed lady who's little younger than me, but super intelligent, and I have to say, kinda cute. We immediately hit it off on a good note, as she has a resilient love towards the ocean and marine life, like me. Francesca works directly under Professor Eric Weisenmeer, who is Chief Science Officer of Marine Research, and the guy who got me into this whole project to begin with. To my understanding, there are 3 other research departments, each with their own CSO. I'll go into detail later. My staff title is Third Science Officer, one of 3. There's another guy called Tom who works on the floor above mine, and the other lady called Christy who's a couple floors down. Below our rank are the Science Division technicians, who are the general lab tech guys. Anyhow, I learned in my first week that my research division would be focused on marine life, behavior, and migratory patterns, which was perfect. My PhD was on the migratory patterns of marine mammals. So my boss is awesome. I'm working on my passion. I have my dream apartment. I'm out on the ocean on the world's greatest ship. I am the luckiest guy in the world. That was last week. Things began to take a strange turn this week. On Tuesday, during my lunch break, I was with Francesca, Tom, and Christy at a Thai restaurant on level 1 of our section that we call the Den. We liked this place because it had a veranda that had steps down to the artificial beach. Anyway, I can explain about the ship later. Everything was fine until the large monitors that usually showed up news and entertainment shows suddenly switched to an alert screen before being replaced by a lady in a naval uniform and hat, and the loudspeakers across the whole ship started blaring. All personnel, this is Captain Hannah Mason, shipmaster of the Ad Novum Crass. May I have your attention, please? She nodded to someone off-screen before clearing her throat. At 5:38 a.m. this morning, our meteorological division received updates regarding a tropical cyclone currently forming northwest of our position. Our team has dubbed it Typhoon Kakabia, and according to current projections, it will reach us by Friday this week. The screen changed to show a satellite image of a big swirl filling the screen, along with some data. I exchanged concerned looks with Francesca and the others. To be honest, I wasn't entirely worried. Pretty sure that the craft could handle a typhoon. To my knowledge, all windows on the craft have been retractable shields just for such events. According to our current models, Kakabia will be a Cat 5 by the time it reaches the craft, Captain Mason said, with a little more of a concerned look. There was a jolt of mutterings through the restaurant, and we noticed a few people getting up from the relaxation down on the artificial beach. However, there is no cause for alarm. The craft is fully capable of withstanding cyclones. We will be deploying storm shields if necessary later in the week, and our nav team is currently calculating a course which will lessen the impact. The captain continued on with some safety precautions that she wanted everyone to keep in mind, but what caught my attention was what Francesca then said. That's funny. Don't typhoons usually travel west? The next day, Wednesday, Captain Mason gave another broadcast in the early afternoon. I was in the lab at the time, helping a couple of the lab techs with some sampled dolphin tissue, when someone popped in and called us out into the hallway. I quickly stored the samples into the refrigeration and followed the others out. There was an interactive display on the wall in the hall, and once again, Captain Mason was speaking. Our speed. Currently, we are adjusting course northeast. However, there are concerns that Kakabia may be unavoidable. Someone appeared beside the captain and whispered to her. She mouthed, "Okay," her expression unfazed, and then thanked the person as they left. She took a deep breath and gave a little nod. My apologies, everyone. In light of updates, it seems Kakabia may be more difficult to avoid. I'm issuing a storm alert, effective immediately. We will be deploying storm shields within the next 3 hours. While the alert is active, access to the beach and skywalls will be restricted for safety purposes. Please limit all shipwide travel to the internal monorail system and refrain from going outside. If you have questions, please direct them to your nearest security officer. Mason continued on with some information, but I was already thinking about other things. I excused myself and jogged down the hall, climbed a flight of stairs, and turned a corner to Francesca's office. After a knock, she called me in. You getting this? How weird is that? I said. Francesca was obviously just as confused as I was. Her eyes were wide, and she shrugged. Yeah, I know, right? Doesn't seem plausible. Also, take a look at this. I seated myself on the other side of her desk as she turned to her monitor so both of us could see. It showed an error page. The site can't be reached. I've tried multiple meteorological sites since yesterday, but none of them are working. DNS errors all around. She typed in the URL bar and hit enter with another error. See? And furthermore, some obscure news sites that I can access. She typed in another address of a small local news station, which worked. I can't seem to find anything about a typhoon. Weird, right? So they're blocking us from checking? Why would they do that? Francesca shrugged and tucked some of her hair back behind her ear. No clue, but obviously they're hiding something about this storm, she said, emphasizing the word storm with air quotes. I mean, you and I both understand what we do here is classified, and we haven't gotten to major projects yet. But Eric seems to think that it's not a storm, possibly a true-to-life test of some kind. I pondered this possibility. Sure sounded more realistic. After all, the last time I checked the skies, there wasn't a cloud in sight. What about everyone else? Surely other people have realized that they can't check the weather. Francesca looked at me with a lopsided smile and tilted her head. Yeah, I spoke to Tom and Christy, and they had the same problem. but they agreed it's possibly a test. So I don't know, maybe. Honestly, I wasn't so convinced about the test thing. But just as the captain had said, 3 hours later, the metal shutters began to close across the whole ship. All the windows, big and small, and even over some doors leading outside. Gentle lights that mimicked soft sunlight came on in the halls, and the top and bottom of displays everywhere had a chevron band that said alert. And then it began to rain. I was still in the lab by myself, typing away about 6 p.m., when I started hearing the pitter-patter of raindrops hitting the metal shutters. For a few minutes it was gentle, but gradually grew louder and louder, accompanied by faint whistling of high winds. By the time I made my way back to my apartment, the sounds against my panoramic window shields were heavy. I jokingly texted Francesca that she was a bad meteorologist because the storm did arrive, much to her chagrin. I had decided to put a movie from Netflix on to help drown it out a bit while I prepared dinner, but it didn't help much. The storm wasn't deafening, but it was insistent, like a constant screeching in your head. Getting to sleep that night was difficult, but the rumbles of thunder helped. The question of why they blocked us from checking up about the storm still stuck, though. When I awoke on Thursday morning, the rain and howling winds were still going on. I switched my TV to a live feed from an external camera. The image was actually quite frightening. The sky was so dark, it could have been night, with thunder and lightning flashing periodically. The rainfall was torrentious, and the ocean heaving. The craft has the latest in gyro stabilization technology, so you really don't feel much. Plus the sheer size helps too. Yet the image on my screen showed an angry ocean, thrashing and crashing against the outside of the craft, throwing up huge sprays multiple stories high. My apartment was level 5 out of 8. I realized that some of that noise against the storm shield was actually ocean breaking and not just rain. That was a little creepy. It made me wonder how this ship could handle a rogue wave, were one to hit. When I got back to the labs, I realized something was actually amiss. Usually Eric was there to give a quick stand-up for the day ahead, but that morning he was absent. Francesca had to step up instead. She basically said that Eric had reported a major migraine and was taking the day off. No biggie. We went about our business. At lunch break, Francesca and I had decided to meet up with Tom and Christy and a couple of others down at lunch at the Thai place again. I had wrapped up my work and was headed out when I heard the shouting down the hall. I quickly rushed to find a man dressed in navy blue security officer's uniform, giving the rescue breast to Kyle, one of the lab techs on the floor above mine, Tom's section. Kyle was lying on the floor, limp-looking, with bloodshot, bulging eyes staring straight up to the ceiling. His mouth was half open, and his lips were a deep shade of purple. To me, he had looked like he'd drowned. It was a horrible sight. "Dr. Chang, right? You know CPR," asked the officer. I nodded as I lowered myself onto my knees and placed my hands over Kyle's chest. "It seems my rescue diver skills are coming into use. You keep up the compression, I'll provide air. Medics are en route." "You!" He pointed to a woman in a lab coat who had stopped to watch with her hands over her mouth. "There is an AED further down the hall. Please get it." The woman nodded rapidly and rushed off. I operated autonomously. Only once before had I needed to put my rescue diver knowledge to the test, back when I was aboard a fishing vessel. 1, 2, 3, 4. I've never actually used these skills ever in a diving incident. 1, 2, 3, 4. But what happened to Kyle? What happened to him? "Maybe a heart attack," the officer said in between breaths. I saw him drop like a rag doll, hit his head on the floor pretty hard. 1, 2, 3, 4. "How's his pulse?" I asked. "No pulse," the officer replied. 1, 2, 3, 4. We heard footsteps as the lady in the lab coat returned, handing the officer the AED box. By this time, a few more people had gathered around and were muttering amongst themselves. I ceased chest compressions and lifted up Kyle's shirt and sucked in a surprising breath through my teeth. Kyle's chest was bruised all over, with the heaviest of bruising around his heart. Deep, dark blue patches that blotched all across his pale skin. It looked like somebody had taken a hammer and smashed it all over his ribcage. I thought, Jesus, what the hell happened to this guy? There's no heart attack injury I've ever heard of. I shot a quick look at the officer, who gave me a terrified, I have no idea, shake of his head, before handing me the AED pads. Taking the pads, I stuck them to Kyle, one over his right chest, one over his left ribs. The AED beeped and flashed green. Everyone stand clear, the officer called out. I moved myself away, watching intently. The officer depressed the button, and Kyle gave a ragged twitch. After checking for breath, the officer motioned for me again. I quickly rushed to continue compressions, this time with more urgency. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Make way, please. 2 paramedics have arrived with a stretcher. The officer and I quickly got to our feet and let them take over. They went to work, checking Kyle all over, prepping equipment, doing CPR, asking questions as they did so. To be honest, I really don't remember what they asked, nor what I had said. Just remember that after a few minutes, the paramedics stopped and shook their heads. The officer came over and patted me on the back, saying something like, "We did our best." I stared at Kyle's wide red eyes and half-open mouth as they pronounced him dead. He was dead. I spoke to the dude just yesterday, and now he's dead. The rest of the day was kind of a blur after that. I totally forgot about our lunch meet and went back to work, only realizing when Francesca called my phone. I told her what happened, and the next thing I knew, she, Tom, and Christy were all in my lab, and we talked through it. Tom rushed off quickly to speak with the medical center, I assumed, and Christy left after giving me a hug. Francesca wanted me to go home early, but I elected to stay and complete some stuff while I wanted to get done. She agreed eventually, and left after giving a hug too, telling me that I did exactly what I should have done. I got back to my apartment around 8 p.m. last night. I had the lab tech guys leave early, but I stayed behind, mostly in a daze. I couldn't get the image of Kyle's bloodshot eyes and agape mouth out of my mind. And his chest. What the hell happened to his chest? I switched the TV to the external camera again, feeling I'd rather have a portal to the outside, even if it's just a violent storm. The wind and rain was still raging against the shutters, so I put on some soothing piano music while helping myself to some wine. At about 11 p.m., after a quick dinner and shower, I was feeling kind of tipsy as I sat back on my bed in my underpants, staring at the TV across the apartment. It was mostly just black, except with the lightning light up the sky, and for the briefest moments you could see the raging storm in the rolling ocean. And then I saw something. At least I think I saw something. I don't even know what I really saw. There was a lightning flash for a second. I thought I saw a plane. A really big plane. Like a black mass moving across the sky. A silhouette amidst the storm. But it probably wasn't, because after thinking about it, if it was a plane, it would have been real close, and on a crash course into the ocean. Then again, it could have just been effect of the lightning. It was probably my intoxicated head playing tricks on me. And then I woke up this morning, and things got even stranger. The storm still raged, my head was groggy, so I guess I didn't drink enough water with my alcohol last night. When I checked the time, I realized I was almost an hour late. So I splashed water on my face and got changed real fast. I rushed from my apartment down to the level 1 monorail station. I just stepped on the rail car when I got a call from Francesca. "Jack, where are you?" I started apologizing profusely, trying to explain that my alarm clock didn't ring when it should have. "Oh, okay. No, that's all right. I mean, where are you now?" Her voice sounded worried and ever so slightly scared. "I'm in the rail car heading down to the den now. Why? What's wrong?" "Okay, I'll meet you on the platform." With that, she hung up. The rail car pulled into the den station 1, the closest stop to the Marine's lab, a couple minutes after the call. I got off and waited on one of the chairs, and about 5 minutes later, I saw Francesca rushing towards me on a very brisk walk. her heels echoing across the deserted platform. I stood to greet her, but she waved me back down, taking a seat next to me. "Are you all right? What happened?" I asked with a frown. I've never seen Francesca in such a worked-up state before. "I don't know. I don't know." She sat upright and took a few breaths. "Eric and Christy have gone missing. I don't know where they are, and my calls are not getting through. Look." She pulled out her phone and scrolled to Eric's number. She put the call on speaker, and we both listened as a tone played, and a pre-recorded message said that the number cannot be reached at this time. Please try again later. I tried on my phone, and same result. Maybe they've got business. Francesca didn't even let me finish. And I ran into Tom earlier, so I asked him about Kyle. She gulped and shook her head. Instantly, Kyle's face came to my mind, and I clenched my jaw. I thought maybe he might just be a little shaken up, you know? I wanted to know if he was doing okay. But as soon as I said Kyle's name, he just turned away and walked. I was kind of shocked. I called out, but he just left. Frankly, I didn't know what to say at that point, so I let her continue. I was like, okay, that was rude. So I decided to give him a call. He picked up quick, sounding happy and all, wishing me good morning, as if I didn't just see him. But as soon as I mentioned Kyle, he just hung up on me. I tried calling again, but he rejected it. I went to his office after that, but he wasn't there. Nobody knew where he went. I was really confused at this point. Was Tom okay? Was it just some method of his in dealing with a traumatic event? So afterwards I thought, okay, I'll go to the medical center, you know? Maybe Eric and Christy were there, and heck, maybe Tom is having a breakdown or something. So I went there, but the staff told me nothing happened yesterday. I explained about Kyle, but they told me that there were no hospitalizations, let alone a death. When I showed them my security clearance and asked to see the morgue, they refused. I was really put on edge at this point. Wait, this can't be. What about the paramedics, or the security officer? What was his name? I thought really hard, trying to visualize his name tag. Richard, that's it, Richard Flint. Did you find him? Francesca shook her head and retrieved her laptop from her bag and flipped it open. She loaded up the CRAS International Network and searched for security personnel assigned to the Marine Science Division of the Den. After going through the whole list of names twice, we did not find Richard Flint, nor anyone by his name or appearance in the whole security detail. What the hell? Francesca was just as confused as I was. Jack, what the hell is going on here? I wish I had an answer for her. I work aboard a ship called the Adnovium Crass. We just say the Crass. And we've been in the midst of a typhoon for the past few days. The meteorological team aboard the ship had named it Typhoon Kakabia, a Category 5 tropical cyclone. No doubt about the intensity, that's for sure. The torrential rain and screaming winds have been hammering on the storm shutters for a while now, with no end in sight. There's been no further ship-wide updates regarding the storm from the captain or any updates from the bridge at all. The alert warning bands across all displays on the ship, including everyone's personal TVs, are still there. It's kind of annoying when you want to watch something like a movie. I confirmed that Kakabia does mean strange, peculiar, extraordinary in Tagalog, the Filipino language. This only confirmed my suspicion about what's happening on board, because why else would they call this typhoon, if it is a typhoon strange? Unless they already knew something was wrong with it. It seemed too coincidental. I told my boss Francesca, but she said Fran is okay about it. I didn't mention anything about this because, well, I'm breaching NDAs by posting all this, so I'd rather keep it undercover until the very last minute. She agreed it was definitely off. Typhoons aren't just given random names. The World Meteorological Organization maintains name lists and assigns them accordingly, so they are internationally recognized. This typhoon, however, has not appeared on any news feeds that we've managed to check, and weather and satellite imaging sites are still being blocked. I don't know what's going on, but there is a cover-up, that's for sure. Plus, Fran and I still haven't managed to find out anything about Kyle, the lab tech that I couldn't save, or about our missing team members, or the security officer, Richard Flint, who apparently never existed. After we met on the monorail platform, we agreed that there was definitely something potentially sinister happening. I couldn't say if it was something to do with the crash as a whole, or if it was something to do with our department on board the ship, or maybe the whole research sector. So for clarification, allow me to explain a little about the ship to help you get a better picture, because I don't want to confuse everyone with the name and stuff. The Ad Novum Crass is a new state-of-the-art ship that was commissioned under the joint authority of the United States government and the European Commission. I believe it's meant as a place for fringe scientific research and testing. The Crass isn't actually a ship in the traditional sense. Firstly, it doesn't move very fast. The max speed is 12 knots, which is roughly 22 kilometers an hour. You could literally ride a bike faster than this ship. Secondly, it's very big. The Crass is kind of like a pie dish floating in the ocean. If you view it from above, the layout is like concentric rings. The outermost ring is what we call the heights, is where the stuff like apartments, entertainment, offices, labs, etc. are. It's like an 8-story tall trapezoid building that runs all the way around the ship. I think the design choice was that the heights could act like an embankment against the ocean. Traveling in, the next ring is what we call the beach, because it's an actual artificial beach at level 1. It's got white sand, real palms, deck chairs, huts, the whole deal. Can't use it now due to the typhoon, but it really is a no expense spared kind of deal. Next, you have the artificial ocean, technically part of the beach, where the seawater is pumped on board to simulate the ocean. It actually has planted coral and fish too. Some parts of it are up to 6 meters deep, so the Marine Science Division actually uses it for experiments and scuba training. Finally, you have the main deck, rising out of the water, a central plateau that's like the top deck of a circular aircraft carrier. It has helipads and big lifts, and at the center is the tall command tower, which looks like an airport ATC tower. There's also 6 skywalks in total connecting the heights, at level 3 to the main deck, like the spokes of a wheel. And to give you a rough image of the sheer size of the Crass, the diameter of the ship is almost 800 meters. It's literally like a floating atoll. So you can understand what a luxurious place this ship can be. Hell, I spent most of my first week's downtime down at the beach, just soaking in the equatorial sun. But now, all the storm shields are down. There's no real sunlight anywhere. All I've got are external camera feeds that show the raging storm outside. Damn, how wrong was I thinking my secretive employment here would be paradise. Anyway, after Fran and I had met yesterday on the platform, we decided to look into everything first before we took it to the onboard authorities. After all, I was pretty sure that Eric, Christy, and Tom would show up sooner or later. They can't have just disappeared. This ship may be big, but we can't even go outside at the moment, unless they found a way and decided to commit suicide by storm. Other than somewhere in the heights, the only other place they could be is in the main deck, or maybe the sublevels, but those are off limits to all but engineering crewmen. Wherever they were, and whatever they were up to, was anybody's guess. They didn't leave a note or a message anywhere, or with anybody. So after a couple hours of splitting up to search through the den is what we call the research sector of the Heights. It consists of marine physics, chemistry, biology, and maritime technology science divisions. Fran and I decided to give up. She notified our lab techs across all floors to take the day off, because without the 3 key members of the team, we couldn't do a lot of our work. The techs were all pretty confused and worried, but what could we do? I met up with Fran again, a bit past noon, at a cafe on level 2, to grab some sandwiches and go through what we knew, which really wasn't much. We talked through the details of Kyle's death, how I had come to help Richard, the security officer, how the bruising on Kyle's chest looked so harsh. Talking about it really brought into light that I literally had somebody die right there in front of me. Fran was extremely kind in how she handled it, though. She told me multiple times how there were no faults to be had and that I did good for Kyle. Then, what one of you had said about his heart exploding came to mind. Yeah, initially I thought he looked like he had drowned. Red eyes, purple lips, pale skin. But those bruises, it could have been some kind of... I rinsed my brain, going through all the probable causes. Maybe some kind of subcutaneous emphysema that caused a heart rupture or something. Fran looked at me incredulously and gave me a little shake of her head. But you said Richard saw him just drop there and then, right? If it was something like emphysema, there would have been symptoms. Tom would have noticed something that morning. She raised her cup of tea and took a sip. And if his heart actually ruptured, Lord, we won't know that unless an autopsy's performed. We sat there for a moment in silence, listening to the dull drone of the wind and thrashing of rain against metal. This cafe was on the inner side of the heights, and usually had great sunlight, but now it was only illuminated by white neon. There was another couple of people huddled in a far corner, talking softly, but the 4 of us were the only customers. There was a staff member behind the display area, leaning on the counter and busy tapping on his phone. The screen above the register area had a tennis match on it. It seemed the whole ship had gotten far more sparse and quiet since the storm hit. So what do we do? Should we inform security? That Eric and the others are missing? Fran shook her head and stirred her tea. I wouldn't. The medical center denies knowledge. They've removed Richard from the roster. Kyle's profile has been removed from our page too. This is definitely a cover-up over his death. Eric and the others could have been arrested or something. I couldn't help but give a sarcastic smile. If that's the case, then I'm next, aren't I? I definitely felt worse after saying that out loud. What if that was the case? For all I know, they could be plotting to make me disappear next. I was right there at the scene, wasn't I? That's not going to happen. We'll get this sorted out. This isn't being leaked to the media. I doubt Kyle's death was a murder, Fran said, giving me a worried look and a weak smile. His death must have been an accident of some kind. Maybe he ingested a chemical or suffered some complications from diving. I think he was doing some work at the beach the day before. From her pointless stirring of the tea to the furrow over her eyes, I could tell that Fran wasn't really convinced at her own ideas either. Well, if I'm not around tomorrow, you should probably pay a visit to the main deck, I joked. Fran didn't even give me a smile. Her eyes darted from left to right, then left again, before settling on me. Okay, here's what we'll do, she said, using a much softer voice than before. Either you're staying over at my place tonight, or I'm staying over at yours. I don't want us separated for long before this whole thing is sorted. I asked if that was really necessary, but in the back of my mind, I kind of agreed with her. In the span of 24 hours, the Marine Science Division has had a mysterious death. The CSO, 3 SOs, and a security officer have gone missing, and staff profiles have been erased. Not to mention no official word on any of it. It was out of line. Yes, necessary. I don't want you disappearing on me too, she said. Fran raised her cup and downed the rest of her drink before standing and going over to the cashier to pay. I looked around the cafe and realized we were the last people in. The other 2 customers must have left while we were talking. It was definitely odd. Usually the cafes and restaurants were always pretty busy around lunchtime at the Den. I wondered where everyone was. Afterward, Fran and I decided to check in on Eric, Christy, and Tom's offices again, but found that the doors were still closed and locked. We tried calling too, but again, their numbers were said to be unavailable. So I accompanied Fran to her office, where she picked up some work documents, and we decided that her apartment was bigger and we'd be staying at her place. As we were making our way through the hall towards the elevator for the monorail, we passed an open-door office. Movement inside the room caught my attention and I looked in. At first I didn't know why I had stopped, but then the woman inside the room stirred my memory. The lab coat lady who received the AED. "Oh, hold on," I told Fran, before turning back to the lab coat lady. "Hey, excuse me, you're the one that grabbed the AED yesterday, right?" The woman looked up from her tablet with a surprised expression and smiled when she recognized me. "Oh, Dr. Chang, right?" she asked. I nodded. "Yes, oh my gosh, it's good to see you. I'm so sorry about what happened yesterday," she said with sadness appearing in her features. I took a step into the room. "I'm sorry too. Are you doing all right?" The woman gave a nod and crossed the room to place her tablet down on a desk. Yes, thank you. Yeah, that poor man. I honestly had no idea what was happening. I was just frozen there with no ideas, until that officer shouted at me." Fran stepped into the room with a quizzical look on her face. "This is the lady that grabbed the AED yesterday," I explained. "She saw pretty much the whole thing, too." "Ah, Dr. Blanco. We've met before at the welcoming ceremony," the lady said enthusiastically, stepping forward to shake Fran's hand. "Please, call me Jen. Yeah, I saw the security officer and Dr. Chang helping the man. Honestly, I really didn't do much." Fran smiled empathetically and nodded. "Still, thank you, Jen, for being there to help. It's terrible that you'd had to witness that too." "Thank you. I was just so shocked. I mean, we've only been here 2 weeks and this happens? Do we know what happened?" Her eyes flicked from Fran to me and back. I felt bad that I couldn't give a clear answer. "No, sorry. I think it could have been a heart attack," I said, and decided to test it. "Speaking of, have you seen the security officer around today?" She shook her head and gave me a little shrug. "No, actually. I was thinking about that, because I was looking for someone earlier and..." She stopped talking. At first I didn't notice anything wrong. I was just waiting for her to continue. Fran was the one to react. She stepped forward, almost like she wanted to hug the woman. Jen had started to stutter. I watched in confusion first, then growing shock as the woman's jaw sagged, almost as if her jaw was becoming dislocated. Her eyes rolled up so far you could barely see her irises anymore. But then that sound. She gave a guttural groan, as if she was drawing in air while trying to speak, before dropping to her knees with a thump. Fran grabbed her at the arms in an attempt to steady her, but too late. Jen fell onto her back, almost pulling the other woman down with her, and began to convulse. Fran stood there in shock, her eyes wide and terrified. I had to claw myself in the leg to start moving. Jesus Christ, not again. "Call EMS," I shouted as I dropped down beside Jen. She was shaking all over like she was having a seizure. I tried to stabilize her, but as soon as I put my hands on her shoulders, I saw what I feared. The blood vessels in her eyes began to spread, turning the whites pink at first, then quickly bloody, engorged red. Her lips darkened rapidly into a deep purplish hue as her skin seemed to drain of all color. I acted instinctively, and ignoring Fran's shocked expletive, pulled down on Jen's tank top. A dark blotch had appeared over where her heart was, growing steadily from the size of an ink drop to that of a fist, as if her heart was bleeding into her skin. Fran was in the midst of rummaging in her bag for her phone, but she stopped to stare in horror. Oh my God. Veins seemed to pop around the initial bruise, spreading outward like vines, before more bruises began to appear. Small at first, growing bigger and bigger. But it wasn't at random. I watched in utter horror and confusion as the bruises appeared one by one, sprawling out from the heart in an anti-clockwise rotation, each growing to the size of a large coin before the next one appeared. Within less than a minute, her chest was covered in a swirl of bruises, just like Kyle's. Shit, there's a pattern. I didn't notice it on Kyle, but I'm seeing it actually form. There's the pattern. Oh my god, is she alive? Is she okay? Fran's panicked voice pulled me out of a daze, and I put my ear to the woman's mouth, tilting back her head. The convulsions had stopped as soon as the bruises finished appearing, but so had her breathing and pulse. I felt nothing. No sound or air escaped her lips. No tick in her neck. Her eyes had rolled back down and was now entirely bloodshot, staring emptily at the ceiling. I knew she was gone. Fran was shaking where she stood, her fingers nervously tugging at her necklace so that the string was cutting on her skin. From her pale face and shallow breathing, I could tell immediately that she was going into shock. My mind went into overdrive. So many thoughts had crossed my head that I had no idea which one to follow. This wasn't natural. No way. I'm certain the same thing happened to Kyle. Was it a disease? A chemical agent? Maybe we've all been implanted with a kill switch. Did Chrissy or Tom or Eric have something to do with this? Are we being tested? Is it caused by the storm? Should we call security? Should we call the bridge? What do we do? I swallowed hard and got back to my feet, putting my arm around Fran. I turned both of us to the door and started walking. We gotta go. We'll go to your place and we'll settle ourselves. But we should leave here right now. Fran just nodded rapidly and let me guide her along. We managed to make it down the monorail, where Fran managed to, thankfully, regain some control, and we rode back to the apartment sector and took the elevator up to level 7, where Fran's apartment was, without much effort. Once inside, I laid her down on her couch and fetched both of us a drink from her fridge. Her apartment was definitely bigger, as her bedroom was an entirely separate room, but like everywhere else, her panoramic window was covered by the storm shield. The typhoon outside continued to howl, sounding as if it knew what had happened. "How are you feeling?" Fran sat up on the sofa and sipped at the soda. I'm okay. She swiveled to put her feet down on the floor and dropped her head into one hand. Oh God, Jack, did you see her face? Christ, we shouldn't have left her. We should call someone. I couldn't help but pace a little in front of her TV. The adrenaline was still rushing inside me, and there was definitely a grip of fear on my mind. No, that shit wasn't natural. Those bruises or whatever it was, those weren't natural. That was no heart attack. But we just left her lying there. I know, but if you're right, this could be contagious. Or this is some crazy shit. I was basically just spewing random stuff out of my mouth at the time. But I knew one thing for sure. No, we wait. We stay in tonight. We stay secure. Tomorrow, we should go straight to the main deck, and we speak to Captain Mason, no one else. We both agreed that speaking directly to the captain would probably be the best course of action at this point. So after calming down, we kept ourselves busy with some individual pieces of work, then made ourselves some microwaved lasagna and ate together, barely talking. Fran excused herself early after grabbing me some spare pillows, and we took turns washing up. She had gone to bed, however, I laid awake for a while, listening to the static of rain and the shrill of the howls of the wind. When I finally fell asleep, my dreams were restless. I was amidst the raging typhoon. I stood atop of one of the viewing platforms, feeling the rain strike my face like 1,000 needles. The wind shrieked around me and the lightning shot down from the rolling black clouds above. I saw Fran's face up there, Tom's face, Captain Mason's face, Jen's and Kyle's face. I watched them drown in the darkness as the clouds turned to water. The sky was full of waves crashing together, throwing their spray down upon me. They were coming. The ocean knows that they are coming. The faces melded together into the black mass that unfurled titanic wings of shadow, rearing in the sky. They wanted to devour me, and they're screaming, oh God, that sickening scream. I twitched awake on the couch, breathing shallow and feeling my skin crawl. It was pitch black in the apartment. The storm outside was as loud as ever, but I could hear a residual scream inside my head. That dream. Christ, I haven't had a nightmare like that in a long time. I checked the time on my phone. 4:22. I tiptoed across the room to switch lights onto dim, and then filled myself a glass of water from the sink, making sure to be as quiet as possible. I thought about switching on the TV to view the storm outside. The external live feeds were all video only, so no problems with sound. I sipped my water and picked up the remote. Then my ears were filled with a terrifying cry, an echoing titanic roar like grinding metal, and a volcanic eruption. It momentarily drowned out the sounds of the typhoon. It sounded like it came from outside. What the hell was that? Jesus, what? The room suddenly turned as red as the overhead lights switched to alarm mode, with a jarring siren blasting out from all around. Then the floor heaved upwards and threw me up and out of the couch. My glass flew out of my hand, and I watched, almost in slow motion, as the water spilled out into the air. Fuck. The last thing I recall was going headfirst into Fran's TV.
Thanks, guests, for your stay here at No Vacancy in room 66. Remember to leave your thoughts in the comments, hit the like button, and subscribe.